Good evening, race fans, and welcome to a lovely day here at virtual Kansas Speedway. We are here for yet another race of the 2022 Midwest Sim Racing Association Rapid Fire Pizza National Series. Here today, my name is Mason Heimbaugh. Alongside me, Jacob Fescannon here with Team Goon Squad, bringing you the action here tonight, 1080p, 60 frames a second. Folks, I'm rather excited to be here tonight. It is the first time that I will be here live for the MSRA Rapid Fire Pizza Nationals. Jacob, what a night to be here. I hope you're excited. You were kind of giving me some pretty good information about Kansas Speedway here and some laps that you were putting down before we went live here. Give me some information, well, not only myself, but give our viewers some of that information and what you found in that testing.
Yeah, we know that Kansas is a 1.5 mile D-shaped oval, does have the progressive banking to it, meaning that as you move towards the outside retaining wall in the corners, the track actually gets banked steeper. So that'll allow drivers to have a combination of various driving lines. Some of them may be able to run the high side, try to carry that momentum all the way through the corner. Some drivers may be working their way around the bottom to try to be a little bit kinder on those right side tires. Definitely is going to be bit of a slick track out there with us running a mid-afternoon race. We should see track temps come up. Drivers should be probably feeling some tire wear before they see fuel become a factor. Got some drivers on track for qualifying now. Let's see if they're going to choose to rip that outside or if they're going to be more comfortable on the bottom. As always here in the MSRA Rapid Fire Pizza National Series, drivers are able to customize their setup so they can make these cars really fit their driving style or their desires, Mason, and that allows a lot of variability, and we could see some close battles tonight.
Yeah, that's what I'm really excited for. I'm always, MSRA, the guys here in the MSRA League always put on some very exciting racing. It's always very close with a lot of these drivers, so hopefully we'll get to see a lot of that here tonight, as right now we're watching along with Robert Anderson, the number 47 machine, currently sitting 6th place in qualifying at this moment with a 31.55 as his best time currently. Billy Fitzgerald, the 22 machine, going to be the pole sitter at this point in time, as that's going to be the end of Robert Anderson's run here. So, with all of that in mind here, we're going to, like you said, Jacob, I think we're going to see, obviously, a variety amongst the drivers as far as what their driving style is going to be here. It's a 160-lap race that we have here, and it looks like James Duke here, the 76 machine, not having the best qualifying run here, as there is smoke pluming out of the front end of that 76 car here as he brings it down into pit lane. But anyhow, the point being here, kind of similar to, in my opinion, kind of MIS in nature, where drivers have a wide variety of options to use, and that kind of plays into the overall strategy of a race here. So some guys, they might want to play things kind of fast and loose here and keep themselves, I don't know, as high up the field as they possibly can early on. Maybe they're going to try and take the opposite strategy, hang back towards the kind of, not necessarily the tail end, but just play the undercut strategy, if you will. But Jacob, as we get ourselves ready to go here tonight, who's kind of your favorite going into tonight's race?
I think we've seen a couple drivers really show their strengths lately. Evan Longacre has the very good potential of putting in a good run after showing some strength last week at Darlington. He's got himself sitting P3 right now. You can see David Centeni have a pretty good run. Kyle Mulring looked like he had some speed last week. So I think there's a couple drivers that definitely have the potential to put up some really good runs. It'll be really interesting to see. Darlington was such a driver's track. Drivers were racing that much more than they were racing their fellow competitors. Kansas, like you said, with MIS, kind of a little more wide open, a little bit of a higher pace track, allows these drivers to really kind of open it up and rip it, see what they can get out of it. So we'll see if there's some other drivers that maybe were a little bit of a dark horse last week, that this plays into their personal driving style, fits them a little better. We've got a good, healthy field. 24 cars out tonight definitely will come into play, because track position is very key at Kansas. It's tough to move your way up through the field, even as tires start to fall off. So drivers are going to want to try to position themselves as close to that front. That clean air helping that car turn through the corners is so critical. So it'll be really interesting to see over the course of tonight's 160 laps what the drivers elect to do in terms of their strategy. And as always, we do have that stage break, which is going to potentially throw a little bit of a wrench into it. We'll see how that goes stage break planned on lap 40. So Mason, we'll see if that also maybe comes into a play a little bit, factors into some of these drivers' strategy tonight.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you there. You mentioned as well, kind of before we went live here, that you were estimating pit stops to be anywhere between the lap 50, lap 53 margin, and with that stage break being about 10 laps before that mark, I think that's kind of almost a perfect point in the race, at least in the early stage, given that there is only one stage break throughout this race here, to kind of allow the field to get restacked and get a good restart in. Anyhow, the starting grid is here for us. Let's go ahead and run through the field. Starting off in row number 1 on the inside, it's Billy Fitzgerald in the 22 machine. On the outside, Colby Baber. In the number 10 car, Evan Longacre in the 95. In the inside of row number 2, Jeffrey Meyer on the outside in car number 50. John Binder on the inside of row number 3 in the 33 machine with Barry Stevens, the 78 car on the outside. Chad Gunningsman on the inside of row 4 in the 9 car with Jamie Knopf. I hope I said that correctly. In the 28 car on the outside of row 4. Inside of row 5, it's Matt Knight in the 25 machine with Steven Davis on the outside in the number 90 car. Round it out for us here, Jacob.
Going back to row number 6, we've got the 18 car of Jeff Hooper starting off in 11th, and outside of him is going to be the 64 of Robert Cook. As we move our way back through the rest of the field, you're going to find the 47 of Robert Anderson pulling himself off P13 tonight, and Richard Malugani in the 86 going to be rolling off in 14th. Brett Wall, 6 car, finds himself starting 15th tonight, and James Duke in the number 76 going to be outside of him starting 16th. Kenny Meadows in the 96 machine rolls off 17th tonight, and outside of him, the number 79, piloted by David Centeni, rolls off 18th. Back in row number 10, we've got the number 8 of Braxton DeWeese starting 19th, and Daniel Simmons in the 61 starting 20th. We move back to row number 11. We've got the 07 of Chuck Waldrop starting 21st. Outside of him is going to be the 20 of Chris Hansen in 22nd. And our last row of our 24 car field is going to be the inside. Kyle Mooring in the 84 machine starting 23rd. And Greg Newsom in the 23 finds himself starting 24th tonight.
24 drivers stacked up for 160 laps around Kansas Speedway. I gotta say, this is going to be quite an interesting race here, Jacob. I've seen it quite often throughout the season already. A lot of these drivers, Fitzgerald, Longacre, Baber, just to name a few off the top of my head, always putting on some incredible racing week in, week out. So here, Kansas going to have a lot of speed for these drivers available to them. And, frankly, given the past broadcast that I've done at Kansas, it's always been some pretty solid racing. So hopefully tonight it's more or less the same, and kind of carrying back to last week to the race that happened at Darlington Raceway, where David Centini coming home with the win in the 79 machine, Jamie Knopf coming home second, Evan Longacre in third. So, hopefully last week, only one caution, the stage caution that we saw for that race. I believe it was the same time as well, lap 40, if I'm not mistaken. But anyhow, point being, hopefully we get to see kind of a repeat of that and see some more great action here tonight as the pace car makes its way down into pit lane. Jacob, why don't you bring us to green?
Get ready to roll. Billy Fitzgerald and 22 machine going to take control of the field as they work their way out of the Geico restart zone. We are green for tonight's action here at Kansas Speedway. Fitzgerald going to work his way up to that high side as they enter into turn 1. We've got side by side behind him between Evan Longacre and Colby Baber. Longacre working the bottom side, Baber the high side. We're going to go back through the field, back to the number 78 of Barry Stevens, 9 of Chad Gunningsman. You see Stevens already working that outside line, carrying that momentum down the backstretch, trying to work his way, now putting on the 33 of John Binder. He gets stalled by the 50 of Jeffrey Meyer, though. Gonna work the outside. Oh, we've got a spin in the back. Looks like the 6 of Brent Wall headed down to the infield. That's not going to bring out a caution as he is off of the racing surface, so it's going to put a bit of a hamper to the start of his race tonight. Also allows Fitzgerald to kind of work away from Colby Baber as they work their way down the middle of the backstretch, Mason, here on lap 2.
Yeah, great driving here from the rest of the field. And, unfortunately for Brent Wall, getting pushed out of the racing line like that, or out of the racing surface onto the grass, not having a caution come out, not able to gather back up with the rest of the field, that is going to hurt quite a lot, more than emotionally, if you get what I mean. But anyway, anyhow, so far seems to be the front of the field starting to get single file for the most part, taking a look a little bit further back towards the field, kind of looking more towards the top 10 at this time. Start to see more side-by-side action, more drivers willing to kind of use the options, the lanes that we were discussing earlier in the broadcast before we took the green flag. Jacob Pescanen mentioning that low line going to not necessarily be as aggressive on those tires, but the high middle lane going to be a little bit more aggressive on that tire wear. So, Jacob, we were talking a little bit, saying how we were going to be looking to see what drivers were going to kind of prefer here early on in this race. And so far, it seems to be, I don't know, it seems kind of like a mixed bag here. We've got some drivers that are wanting to get down real low here. But then you got those just a handful of drivers that are sticking right on that middle to outside lane and not really going down too low here. What do you think is the strategy here with that?
I think it kind of just depends, again, with this being a series that allows drivers to customize the settings on the vehicles. It's kind of what the drivers prefer, what they find their driving style. Some drivers are able to save those right side tires and still enter on the outside a little aggressively. You're seeing it more predominantly in 1 and 2 so far early on here. So we're looking at a side-by-side battle. A little bit more of a mixed bag in
Yellow's
turn
out.
1 and 2. And we get our first yellow. Looks like Braxton DeWeese in the 8 might have had a bit of an issue, possibly Kenny Meadows as well.
It looks like Kenny Meadows coming back up on the racing track. It looks to be the 96 Rolex machine having quite a bit of damage to that left side, left rear, it appears. Let's go ahead and see if we can get a replay of the incident here. So this is a little bit further ahead than what we would like here. Let's take a look at the incident here itself. Oh, just clipped the wall. Coming out of 4 into the side of the 47 of Robert Anderson. Wow. That is, I say it all the time in a lot of my shows, how things can happen in the blink of an eye here, Jacob. And I don't think in that moment Kenny Meadows could have done anything to save himself or the 47 in that moment.
No, Robert Anderson in a really bad spot, just underside of the 96 and Meadows, trusting him that he was going to be able to make a stick. I gotta wonder, if we were to go back and look at that a little further, if possibly Kenny Meadows might have got on the throttle a little bit early, might have had potentially a bit of a tight condition coming out of the corner, because you see him make contact with the outside retaining wall there just after the safer barrier, and it just launches him down the track. Again, Robert Anderson with nowhere to go, just a really tough break early on. But I got to wonder if Anderson fighting there on the outside, or Meadows fighting on the outside, maybe trying to get a little bit more out of the car than what it was going to offer him there grip level wise, and just fortunately not quite able to make it stick. It's the second time we've seen Anderson with some problems here, as he looks like he got some pretty hefty damage there on the backside. And with how high speed it is here at Kansas, aero is definitely going to play into effect. It'll be tough for these drivers to maintain a competitive pace right now with the current states of their vehicles.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Getting minor bings and bangs from getting alongside of drivers is one thing. Body panels can be replaced, but when you're beating into the walls or really getting into one another, that's when you're starting to break critical components of your race car, and that really affects the handling. It affects how the car is able to move and roll, first of all. But aside from all of that, great to see that not a whole lot of drivers were involved in that incident. Most of the field able to avoid the carnage there. Only appears to be 3 drivers that got collected in that. One of them only got a clip from the 47 coming up to the top of the track there. But we're getting ourselves racked and stacked here once again. The top 3 have not changed since we started. Billy Fitzgerald in that first place spot here. Colby Baber in second. Evan Longacre in third. Barry Stevens up 2 spots from where he started in 6th place in that 4th place position at this moment. Jeffrey Meyer having dropped down into 5th. Chad Gunningsman up 1 spot into 6th place. Jamie Knopf in 7th. John Binder in 8th place, with Stephen Davis in 9th and Robert Cook rounding out our top 10 here as we await the pace car to make its way back down into pit lane. The lights are still on, so I would have to imagine here that we have at least one or two more laps to go before we see the safety car, pace car, make its way back down into pit lane.
Yeah, it looks like some drivers also not involved in that wreck opting to come in for service under this caution flag. Top 16 all staying out, so not too much of a mixed bag of strategy. I'd be hard pressed to expect that many of the drivers were going to use the set of tires that came in. Looks like some of them might have come in to grab an opportunity to repair some damage. We saw the 6 of Brett Wall, who was involved in that spin, lap 1, getting some damage repaired. We've still got the 47 of Robert Anderson, 96 of Kenny Meadows driving some repairs as well. 86 of Richard Malugani on and off pit road. Chuck Walder up in the 07 on pit road. So a couple drivers in the back, but I don't think it's really going to shake up the strategy too much. I really wouldn't have expected many drivers to come under this caution with it being so early, Mason. If we get to something maybe like lap 30, possibly 32, you may see some drivers elect to come then and forgo pitting under the stage break. But this early on, I think everybody in the front was electing to keep their track position, stay towards the front of the field.
Yeah, you know, and I think it's kind of almost a gamble, too, when you're coming down this early. You're only allocated so many sets of tires behind the wall. Sometimes it's a good strategy to come in early and say, hey, you know what, I have an extra, let's say, 10 laps now to work with ahead of everyone else. But it can almost kind of come back to bite you once that time comes where you need to come down into pit road and all of a sudden you're dropping down 6, 7, 9, 10 plus positions because you took that chance. It didn't really play out in your favor. And I think a lot of the times when drivers kind of enact a strategy, it's maybe because they're expecting more cautions to come out throughout this race here tonight. But even then, it's still a gamble. I don't know. Can't read the minds of every driver here, but I'm more than certain that someone's going to have something up their sleeve here tonight as the pace car back into pit lane as we head into the Geico restart zone here at Kansas. Back to green flag racing. Billy Fitzgerald, I don't know where I got Barry from, taken away from the rest of this field, building up an impressive gap, nearly just over a quarter of a second. Let's see how long he's able to retain that side by side. Meanwhile, behind him, between Colby Baber, Evan Longacre, Jeffrey Meyer, Barry Stevens, and looking behind them, it's only getting more and more intense as it starts to get more single file up here towards the front of the field. But we've got more drivers looking down on the inside of one another, more drivers keeping up high. Lots of strategies being played out, but look at this view as we come across the checkered line back into turn 1.
Even Centenny there in the 79 machine working the inside. He's falling behind the 28 of Jamie Knopf. Outside of him, you've got the 9 of Chad Gunningsman, as well as the 78 of Barry Stevens up there leading that outside row. They work their way back into turn number 3. Off and Stevens still working that inside line, or Centenny getting a really good run. We've got almost a moment of 3 wide there. Looks like Gunningsman is almost ready to tuck behind Centenny as Centenny works all the way down to the grass on the apron on that front stretch. You're going to see that move employed by a lot of drivers tonight as well. Centenny tries to work his way up through the field. He's your current hard charger, up 12 spots after starting in 18th. Tonight finds himself just outside the top 5. Eyeing that top 5 spot, works his way back to the high side in turn number 3. He's going to try to carry some momentum through the center of the corner. You see Gunningsman in the number 9 machine trying to close up to him. I'm going to go back, looking at Gunningsman though in the number 9 machine as he files in behind Centenny, works his way back down to the bottom side. He's just ahead of the 61 of Daniel Simmons. Simmons also up 12 spots. So we've seen a couple drivers early on here, Mason, that are able to move their way, but we've still got some competitive racing here after this restart.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. You know, it seems like every time we get that field, there's kind of a weird, I don't know how to put this into words, but my point being here is that these drivers kind of have 2 strategies, it feels like sometimes with these races. You have the pre-stage caution strategy, and then you have the rest of the race strategy. You know, some of these guys, they stay extremely reserved throughout kind of the first 40 laps here in this case, and then they kind of really turn the burners on in that second half. And granted, that's usually an appropriate time to do so, knowing that you have a predetermined caution that's going to come out. You're able to come down into pit lane, get a new set of tires, fuel, what have you. I understand it can change the dynamic of your approach to a race, but it's just interesting how drastic it can be amongst certain drivers. But so far, it seems like Baber, Fitzgerald, Longacre, they're full throttle here at this moment. Not either one of them giving up any pace here. Colby Baber currently leading the field at this moment ahead of Billy Fitzgerald, nearly a second separating these two. So the 10 machine currently flying at this point in time. So let's see how long or how much distance he can gain between himself and the 22 of Billy Fitzgerald. But looking just a little bit behind them, we've got Evan Longacre as well as Jamie Knopp duking it out side by side as they work their way heading through turns 3, going to come out of turn 4 and out into the front straightaway, or front curve rather, if you will. But right now, racing seems to be pretty calm here once again. Not a whole lot of, well, at least towards the... You know what? Right as I said that, Jacob, I saw some numbers starting to flicker around in timing and scoring, and of course, as soon as I point the cameras at it, that's where the action is.
Looks like we've got the 33 of John Binder with a bit of an issue, a bit off the pace on the front stretch, so he falls back through the field. You see the 07 of Chuck Waldrop move on by him. Binder falls back to the 19th place. He was your 5th place starter tonight, so he's having a bit of a rough go with that. You can see up high here looking at it, looks like it's a bit off the pace, looks like, so not quite sure exactly what happened there. Possibly might have had an issue on the backstretch prior to that, so we're still green here. Still got a good battle up front right now. Colby Baber taking advantage of that clean air, finds himself in the lead. As we said, Centenny, the 79 machine, really trying to motor his way up. See him working past the 61 of Daniel Simmons, setting his eyes on the number 95 Evan Longacre. We're going to go on board with him, get you a really good view of what these multiple groups look like here at Kansas. Wall is what we call running in the high side, wall riding, Kyle Larson, tire work, whatever you want to assign to it. It is definitely not for the faint of heart. We know Centenny's definitely comfortable with that, as he was able to make that high line work at Darlington to its perfection. He works around Evan Longacre, clears him. They work their way back onto the front stretch, entering back into turn 1. Let's see if he chooses to stay with that high side. Looks like he is, so I think he's finding a little bit more comfort in the balance of the car, maybe a little more momentum up there on the top side, and willing to make some passes there. It's Mason, it's so tough when these drivers go up to the top side. They are just able to carry so much momentum off of the corner, and with them being on the outside, if you're running side by side as that driver on the inside, you almost have to wait to be able to get back onto the throttle to avoid getting into their left side door, and that just further exaggerates that difference in momentum. So it's a really good defensive strategy that once you've gotten by a competitor, if you want to try to defend that position and stall them out, the high side is a really great place to go if your balance is suiting you up there.
Yeah, and right now it seems the 79 machine is rather comfortable up there on the top line, so I think you're definitely onto something there, Jacob. And right now, you know, kind of looking at the momentum that Centini has over the likes of Longacre, Simmons, Meyer, Stevens, who are currently trailing behind him single file, definitely seems like some of these drivers are starting to take some notes here from the 79 driver. Only just a little bit, though. You see Evan Longacre and as well as Daniel Simmons behind them. They're kind of opting to stay a little bit lower, kind of trailing more towards the middle, going through what was just turn 1s and 2 there. But still close enough that, you know, I think they're starting to realize perhaps that maybe staying up here on the high side is going to play in their favor. You can even see Daniel Simmons, I don't know, a lot of variety that we're seeing out here on Kansas, but that's what I love about tracks like Kansas, Michigan International. You know, it's just, you have so many different options to work with as a driver, and it just poses some very exciting racing as we are just under halfway before the first stage caution of the night. Lap 40 is when that yellow flag will fly here, and right now Colby Baber, he's worked himself up an impressive 2.5 seconds between himself and second place Billy Fitzgerald. So Baber's obviously got an incredible pace to set here tonight, and I'm not sure who is going to be the driver to respond to that once we come back to, well, once the caution comes out and once we get restacked and back to green flag racing. I mean, Billy Fitzgerald, he's been fighting up there in that second place spot for some time now, and we're actually starting to see Jamie Knopf, the 28 driver, working his way down onto the inside, challenging the 22 for that second place spot here. So, I don't know. Is Billy Fitzgerald maybe holding back here a little bit, kind of trying to conserve tires, even though we are still expecting a caution here in the next 14 laps?
Definitely could be a viable strategy. Could be using this as maybe a little bit of a test run to evaluate the rest of the races. You're still going to have 3/4 of the race to go once we get that first stage break. So could be definitely something there too, like you mentioned, Mason. Could just be maybe not wanting to push it too hard, protect some track position, still keep himself inside the top 5, and then set the rest of the race to go. 160 laps is a long way. It seems like it's really quick when you're clicking off 32-second laps, but it is quite a long race. Allows these drivers a lot to think about, not wanting to overdrive it. Jamie Knopf has been one of the quicker ones. He and Santini, just as I say that though, we have a caution
no
out
caution,
on
no
the
caution.
track.
We're good. It's,
All right, we stay green. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
But anyways, Knopf and Santini, one of the fastest drivers, not named Colby Baber right now. Colby Baber just taking advantage of that clean air maze, and I mentioned at the beginning, that is king. That provides so much relief and grip for your car that you can do a lot. Other drivers back in this traffic here, these side-by-side battles, are not able to do. We go back a little bit through the field, so you see an almost 3-wide battle here. We've got the 9 of Gooning's men. We've also got the 78 of Stevens there as well. Looks like also the 8 machine Braxton DeWeese, he's a couple laps off the pace, so not in this battle. But we're seeing, again, that illustration of multiple lines. Drivers working the low side, the middle side, the high side. Braxton DeWeese on a little bit of fresher tires, so we're seeing some extra speed out of him there compared to the other two. But it's really good battles here as drivers are trying to move their way up through the field. It's getting stretched out here as we go, as we've still got 20 cars on the lead lap. Drivers still trying to find some momentum, find their way through the field. Just all in how hard you want to push, how early on you want to try to make these moves. I think drivers, now that we've settled into a little bit of a longer green flag run, are kind of trying to get into a bit of a rhythm here. Whereas on those restarts, they're trying to get as much position as they can as quickly as possible. So you see that gung-ho style then, and now it kind of smooths out. So we're looking at the 22 Valley Movers Chevy Camaro machine for Billy Fitzgerald. He's just 3/10 ahead of Jamie Knopf. 1/10 of a second was the difference in the last lap you see there on the left side of your screen. So Fitzgerald Knopf kind of trading some time back and forth, closes in. We saw the same thing happen last week as well, Mason. These Xfinity Series cars are known for this bubble of air off the back end that when you get to about 1/10.5 to 2/10 within your competitor, it just almost stalls you out. It's so hard to break through that.
Ooh.
Although just as I say that, Fitzgerald opens up that door for Knopf to go on by as he gets into the wall in the middle of 1 and 2. So put Jamie Knopf up to P2, Billy Fitzgerald back to 3rd now, and Santini's going to try to look to take advantage of that mistake here as they work their way through the middle of turn 3 and 4.
Well, knowing, kind of knowing that now with the dynamic, the aero here of these cars, and kind of noticing now amongst the field where drivers are kind of getting stuck in that situation where they're kind of getting stuck behind that bubble of air, as you mentioned. Yeah, it's interesting to see. It's, I think, a battle that a lot of drivers are constantly facing and are trying to figure out different ways to avoid. But when you are in that situation and there's really not much else that you can do, I mean, it's a tough situation to be in. What you really want to have happen in that course of basically drivers want to see a yellow if they're in that situation. They want to be able to restack the field. They want to be able to kind of have another chance to gain positions, be able to have fights again, be able to be in those battles, because that's what all drivers want to be able to do. I mean, maybe not every single driver, but getting stuck out by yourself in the middle of the racetrack with no one to battle with or even just follow along with can be, well, boring, to say the least, from a driver's perspective. But right now it seems like a lot of this field is pretty well stacked up with each other. Not a whole lot of drivers are stuck out by themselves, like I was alluding to. If we take a look at the track map, it's a little bit cut off there. I do apologize for that. But the message that we're trying to portray here is that we've got a pretty good chunk of drivers that are all, I mean, at least relatively on the same section of the track. We have two drivers, the 76 and the 47, kind of outliers here at this moment. But for the most part, everyone is at least stacked up with someone. Everyone's at least in a 1 or 2 car pack, 3 car packs in some situations. Even if we look a little bit further back here, we can actually see that with Chad Gunningsman, Barry Stevens, Matt Knight here as well. So even as we have 4 laps to go before the stage break, I mean, I'm rather impressed with how close these drivers are able to keep these cars together, even despite knowing the difficulties that you can have with the aero with these cars.
Yeah, we've got a good battle going on here between the 9 of Chad Gunningsman and the 78 of Barry Stevens. This is for the 9th and 10th place on track. This has been going on for a few laps. We've seen this on and off, and that's also allowed the 25 of Matt Knight to insert himself in that 25 thin line racing machine, working his way to the inside of Stevens as they come down the front stretch, across the start finish line. They begin lap number 37. See Knight really able to work that inside line a little bit better than some other drivers around him, as Stevens goes all the way up to the outside retaining wall near the safer barrier. So Knight looking like he's got a little bit of late run speed, which if we do stay green, that certainly could play into his benefit. All depends on how these drivers have these cars set up. So Matt Knight now finding himself in 10th. Down 1 spot after starting 9th, but rebounding well after some early setbacks. He's trying to set his sights on the number 9 of Chad Gunningsman. Last time by, he was almost identical, about a 1/10 a second faster than Gunningsman. So with only 8/10 to go, I'm not quite sure if he's going to get there before the stage break expected to come out, but he's certainly showing that he might have the strength to contend for a top 5 or a top 10 finish before the end of the night. We go back up to what is a battle that it seems like it has gone on for probably the last 15 or 20 laps, Mason. It is still the 79 of David Santini, 95 of Evan Longacre. Longacre, every time looking like he was kind of falling off the back of him, just finds a way to claw back on that inside. Santini still committing to that high side as they work their way through the middle of turn 1 and 2. Longacre committed to that white line on the inside. Santini just inches off the outside retaining wall. You can see Santini pull a couple car lengths ahead of Longacre as they went down the backstretch. Again, that's that power of that outside line, giving the drivers that momentum, that speed boost there in relation to their competitors. Longacre electing to take the high side through 3 and 4. He's also got the 50 of Jeffrey Meyer right behind him. So this is a good 3-car battle here for 4th, 5th, and 6th. Just you think the front 5 kind of want to separate themselves out, get to that stage break. We still see competitive racing. Meyer working his way down to the bottom. Longacre working his way off the top. Maybe taking a page out of Santini's book here. Expect a stage break to come in the next lap or 2 here. See when the field all crosses the line and gets the green. But for the moment, we're still green. And we've still got a good battle here, 4th, 5th, and 6th between the Santini machine, Longacre, and Meyer.
Yeah, and before we take the yellow flag here for the stage break, David Santini is actually currently the hard charger of the race, up 14 spots from where he started in 18th here tonight. And there it is, the yellow flag flying here for the stage break here tonight. I gotta say, for David Santini, this is probably the best way that you can kind of start off your race here tonight. I mean, having started towards the tail end of the field, working your way up into the top 5, and now heading into a stage break to get yourself re-racked, restacked, ready to go again for your next stint here. I think David's in a really good position to kind of just keep things going here. I'm excited to see what he's got in store, what he's got up his sleeve here for this next restart, as Colby Baber currently the driver to, well, be challenged at this moment. Baber is just leading this field with a dominant lead, or at least was. The last time I looked at it, I think it was about 3.5 seconds between Baber and Jamie Knopf in that second place spot. So Baber, I don't know what he's got inside that number 10 car. I don't know if he put some Mountain Dew and NOS inside of it or what, but he is on wheels here tonight. And Jamie Knopf, Billy Fitzgerald, both of those two drivers, they've been keeping up fairly well here for the most part. I mean, even despite the distance that Colby Baber has been able to pull here tonight. But drivers making their way down through pit lane as we get ourselves ready for the next portion of tonight's race of the 2022 MSRA Rapid Fire Pizza Nationals, also brought to you by Old School Ninjas. A big shout out and thank you to the series sponsors of the MSRA Rapid Fire Pizza Nationals. Wouldn't be able to do it without these guys. Definitely would not be sitting here bringing you the action here tonight if it wasn't for these sponsors. So big shout out, big thank you to Rapid Fire Pizza Nationals as well. Rapid Fire Pizza, as well as Old School Ninjas. But Jacob, how are you feeling right now? What do you think is kind of, I don't know. We've seen the dominance that Baber has had here in this first half of the race, well, first kind of quarter-ish of the race. What do you think is kind of in the bag here for Baber as well as maybe the top 5?
I think we could potentially see if somebody in the back half of the field wants to take a gamble, if they want to try to save enough fuel. As again, we alluded, 50 to 53 laps is the expected green flag run on fuel. We saw about 2 to 2.5 seconds of fall off there in the lap times over the course of that 40 lap run, and having a caution mixed in there kind of helped maybe not degrade the tires quite as fast. But I'll be interested to see if anybody in the back that wants to take a shot at maybe a top 5, might not necessarily have a shot at winning, but wants a good finish out of tonight. You'd be interested when they get the green. They're going to only have about 112 to 115 laps. Be really interested to see if somebody's going to try to save enough fuel and just split this and go one more stop if we were to stay green the rest of the way. I think everybody else likely going to be running right around 35 to 40 lap runs, try to use the remaining 2 sets of tires that they're expected to have in their pits. Santini, one of your hard chargers, actually having a bit of an issue on pit road, a little bit of a longer stop. He comes back out in 10th, so be curious to see how hard he has to push the pace to try to get through. We also saw Evan Longacre jump Billy Fitzgerald for 3rd, so Longacre was looking pretty racy there, hanging with Santini. So I'll be curious to see, with him restarting on the inside behind the number 10 of Colby Baber, if that's going to maybe set a little bit of a battle up front. And we'll see, Mason, too, if that clean air still comes into play. We saw Fitzgerald look like he was going to be the dominant car early on, and then Baber worked by him early on after that restart, after our first caution. Kind of checked out. We'll see, is anybody else going to be able to lay challenge to Baber, or is he going to set off into the Kansas afternoon here?
Yeah, this is going to be an exciting restart here. You know, we're only lap 45 of 160 here, but I feel like we're just about 20 laps away from the checkered flag at this point with just the action that we're seeing right now. But it's still a long race left to go here, folks, so stay tuned, don't go anywhere. We're still going to be calling the action here, bringing you tonight's race from Kansas Speedway. And I gotta say, this has been very good racing here thus far. The top 3, we saw quite a bit of spread happening. You know, Baber, he has just shown his dominance here kind of in the later portion of that first stage here. Jamie Knopp, he's coming up here in 2nd place. Billy Fitzgerald, Evan Longacre. Fitzgerald, who was, like Jacob was mentioning, had a really great start here, but Baber just kind of, it seems like he just came out of nowhere, it felt like. But let's see what these drivers have in store this time around, especially that of Evan Longacre, Billy Fitzgerald, Jamie Knopp here as well for that of Colby Baber, and see what kind of challenge they can put up for that 10 machine. I'm really curious to see how this is going to play out, knowing that Baber's going to take this outside line. We've seen it all night here, well, for most of the race here tonight, that outside line being pretty preferred among some drivers. So here we go. Through the Geico restart zone, the green flag drops here once more at Kansas Speedway. We are back to green flag racing. Jamie Knopp, Evan Longacre, almost side by side there for a moment there, as now the 28 machine getting separated from the band of cars as we work our way through turns 1 and 2 onto the back straightaway. Right now, Baber, he is just launching himself away from this field. Already nearly a second gap separating himself in second place Jamie Knopp. So I don't know what Baber has going on for him underneath the hood of that 10 machine, as we've got trouble back towards the field here. Looks to be a driver, not currently, looks like Matt Knight, the 25 machine, getting a little bit loose coming out of 4. Maybe a little bit of contact there, actually, but no caution coming out from that. We're still green flag racing here as we come down the back straightaway heading into turn 3.
Chad Gunningsman in the number 9 machine working down to that inside line. He's just ahead of the 50 of Jeffrey Meyer, lining up right behind Evan Longacre, but he quickly pulls his car to the outside of the track, now coming back down to the apron as Evan Longacre works on the apron near the grass. They enter back into turn number 1. Now we see Gunningsman run up to the high side. Middle of the track, Longacre working the bottom, Meyer working the bottom, and just behind them also the 22 of Billy Fitzgerald. See how this goes as Fitzgerald and Meyer going to run side by side back into turn number 3. Meyer again in the 50 Nitro Chevy Camaro going to work back down to the bottom. See Fitzgerald working that high side. Longacre and Jamie Knopf up front. You see them working their way onto the apron in the front stretch, trying to shorten that length of the front stretch, get a little bit more speed out of it. Fitzgerald continuing to rip the outside line through 1 and 2. Meyer and Gunningsman committed to that bottom side. It's like Fitzgerald closes up. He's now about 0.08 of a second behind Meyer. Equates to about a quarter of a car length. They're going to go back into turn number 3. See if Fitzgerald can try to close that up at all. Longacre, a little bit of a slip up there out of turn 4. Slows down, allows Gunningsman to close up near him. They go back across the start-finish line. We are on board. This is going to be with the number 22 of Billy Fitzgerald working that high side. You can see he's got the 50 of Jeffrey Meyer just ahead of him. Meyer now taking that high side, maybe trying to take that line away from Fitzgerald, as we alluded to earlier tonight. Now working the high side on both sides. See that car really coming close to that outside retaining wall, trying to gain as much momentum as he can off the corner. It's going to put 50 laps on the board here. We've got 110 to go. Drivers still ferociously trying to gain spots off this restart. You can see just up in the distance, 10 of Colby Baker really extending that lead out. Now almost a second and a half here early on. Cleaner really coming into play. Fitzgerald now working to the inside. Looks like he's going to clear the 50 of Jeffrey Meyer down the backstretch. David Santini, the 79, also going to put a pass on Meyer. He's got a little bit of a shake up here in the back half of the top 10, but still a great battle going on. Is just ahead of this is also side by side between the 9 of Gunningsman and 95 of Longacre. So Mason, like I alluded to here, restart's so critical to try to gain as many spots as we can, and we wondered how quickly the 79 machine of Santini would respond after that error on the pit stop under the stage brake. Looks like he's starting to move his way through, trying to lay down some fast laps.
Yeah, currently up on the outside lane here alongside the 50 of Jeffrey Meyer. David definitely not giving up after that little bit of a hiccup after that stage break. He's up from P10 from where he restarted up here into 6th place. So not too bad here for David Santini, and it's still a long race left to go as we now lap 53 of 160 at this moment. Pretty comfortable looking out there on the racetrack itself. Not a whole lot of beating and banging happening. Drivers being very, very careful to keep themselves plenty of room between one another, not getting too aggressive on the inside of one another or into the sides of one another rather. But right now, behind David Santini, Jeffrey Meyer, there's a few more drivers side by side. We've got the 78 Barry Stevens, as well as the 61 of Daniel Simmons, also trailing along side by side here with Robert Cook just ahead of them. Robert Cook now going to be in trouble here in the 64 Wrangler machine as we work our way through turn 3. So, you know, with keeping in mind that drivers are, you know, this is an open setup league, drivers are able to kind of modify and tweak things to their race car, to, you know, to the preferred racing style, to their driving style, what have you. With, you know, with a race like this, what would be kind of the first thing that you would tackle as a, you know, as a setup, well, as a setup engineer or what have you?
Well, getting the balance right for how you want the car to feel. Some drivers tend to enter into the corners maybe a little bit more aggressively. They'll get off of the throttle a lot quicker. They'll get on the brakes if they're needed a lot quicker. They'll kind of turn in a little bit sharper. All that kind of differences, both how you get into the corners and how you get out of the corners, changes how that car wants to transfer its weight and its momentum, which kind of dictates really a starting point of how you need to build all the suspension and the ride height settings. And you're going to be looking with these cars, as we mentioned, aero based. So they're going to be wanting to get these chassis and these bodies in very specific positions. They want them at certain points throughout the track, try to maximize the benefits of that airflow over the car, both with the splitter on the front as well as that tiny rear spoiler on the back. You still want to try to get as much downforce as you can. Then there's a couple different theories that are kind of floating around in the garage right now that drivers may give a little bit of a test to, depending on how they want to set up the springs on the car. It works to their benefit, so that may be something else that they experiment with as well. And you're going to see drivers probably making setup changes throughout the race as well over the next couple pit stops, maybe changing a little bit on the track bar, maybe adjusting how, again, it balances entries or exits of the corners, maybe a little bit of an air pressure adjustment in one of the right side tires to possibly help that drive into the corner off. So there's a lot of options at these drivers' disposal that even if they didn't start tonight out necessarily with the best handling car, they got some options to try to bring it back to them. And as this race goes on, we're going to see a change in both the track temperature, with us working more towards the mid-afternoon, as well as how much rubber is on the tracks. So that's going to change how those cars feel, Mason. Drivers are going to be making some chassis adjustments to account for those as well. Because if you're not keeping up on that, there's competitors around you that are going to take advantage of that and work on by you. So we see the 95 of Longacre currently working about a quarter of a second ahead of Fitzgerald. He occupies the 4th place. Fitzgerald back in 5th. Seems like, again, there's that bubble of air that I was kind of alluding to earlier. Fitzgerald can get within a couple tenths, maybe 3-4 car lengths, and he just kind of stalls out and can't go anywhere. Car, though, we need to keep an eye on, Mason, Jamie Knopf in the 28. It's cut the gap now almost in half to the 10 of Colby Baber. So this might be the first car you could possibly see challenge Baber for that race lead if we're able to stay green here on our second fuel run of the evening.
Yeah, and looking at timing and scoring as well, it appears that Jamie is actually reeling in Colby here rather quickly. He is on pace, actually faster than Colby Baber at this moment. I don't have an exact number how much faster, but he is, well, let's say every turn he's probably bringing it down at least 200ths of a second, 300ths of a second, if not more. Right now he brought it down to 0.6, 0.68, 0.69 just from that turn alone. So, I mean, I don't know what Jamie here has kind of picked up on in this later half of the race here. Well, kind of the next half of the race, rather, after this stage break. But Colby Baber definitely going to be seeing some trouble here as that 28 machine, the yellow Menards machine, start to trail in behind that 10 car and start to be a nuisance in the mirror of that 10 machine. And I think I misspoke when I said Menards. That is definitely not Menards. I feel bad now.
Yeah, that's the Elite Performance Industries number 28 Toyota Supra for Jamie Knopf there. Again, about 3/4 of a tenth faster the last time by. We'll see as they cross the start-finish line if he continues to reel that gap in. Last time by, identical lap times to the 100th of a second for those two. So we'll see how that continues to unfold here. We're working lap number 63, but we've got a heavy battle back here. This is the 79 of Santini, 61 of Daniel Simmons on the outside, 50 of Jeffrey Meyer, and the 64 of Robert Cook working the bottom side. This is for 6th through 9th on track. Still seeing that separation of drivers where they want to run in terms of the race line. Looks like we've got 3 lines in play now as Simmons working the outside, Meyer the middle, and Cook the bottom side. See how these drivers all work their way as they go across the start-finish line. See if that separation continues to unfold as we're looking out the bumper of Daniel Simmons. Looking back, oh, just as I said it, Jeffrey Meyer, a little bit of a tag there in the outside retaining wall in the middle of one inch. He causes him to slow up, allows Robert Cook to take over 8th. Meyer able to keep it under control though, so he doesn't lose too many more spots if we stay green. That is the perils of running that outside line. If you misstep just a little bit, it definitely can get your car in the wall. Pose some problems. The other thing too that we're going to start seeing now that we're starting to see a longer green flag run, tire wear is going to come into play. Tires wear across the track. kind of pulls that rubber off almost in like a cheese grater type sense. And what that happens, that hot rubber coming off will tend to ball up and form what we call the marbles. Little tiny balls of rubber on the track you'll start to see as a darker discoloration in the track. If you drive in that, imagine trying to drive at over 100 miles an hour on a gravel road. Your car is going to go sliding almost like it's on ice, kind of like what just happened to the 61 Escades there. Car just loses all capabilities of being able to turn. So as drivers continue to run that outside line, you're going to see that kind of form right up against the wall. And if the drivers just overstep into that, they could see that outside wall make contact with their right side door as well. It looks like Meyer trying to reset, trying to get back to the backside of Robert Cook, but Robert Cook going to put the pressure on Daniel Simmons. Those two only separated by a car length as they work their way off of turn number 4, back onto the front stretch, both eyeing up the 79 of Santini out their windshield here. So we're working lap number 67 of 160 tonight.
Great racing here tonight at Kansas, and right now, so far, we're seeing a lot of the same action that we were seeing before we took that stage caution, where drivers were just getting themselves comfortable in whatever spot they happen to be in, and just pushing from there, or at least just kind of enacting their strategies here tonight, just making sure that they're hitting their marks every time, and making sure, especially if they're running that outside line, not getting too close to the wall like we've seen some drivers here do already, just making a little bit of a slightly more aggressive love tap than you would normally like to make here. But everyone's still racing here strong and well. Only a handful of drivers have fallen out of the race here tonight. Greg Newsom, Brent Wall, Kenny Meadows, and Braxton DeWeese have retired their race cars. They're taking it behind the wall and watching it from the infield center here tonight. As we continue on with our green flag run here, lap 69 of 160. I think it's going to be a good time here, Jacob, to take a step away from the booth here for a moment, take a little bit of a commercial break, and when we come back, we will have more of the 2022 Midwest Sim Racing Association Rapid Fire Pizza Nationals, as well, brought to you by Old School Ninjas. Folks, don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. We'll be back for more iRacing right here on Team Goon Squad in just a few moments.
Driver Carrington gets dumped by Benami. The leaders are winding up here. The big one is out.
Alrighty, folks, welcome back to the 2022 MSRA Rapid Fire Pizza Nationals here at Kansas Speedway. Still clicking off here laps with Chris Hansen in the 20 machine alongside Barry Stevens in the number 78. Lap 72 of 160. Fairly steady racing here since the stage break at lap 40. So far, I think actually the longest green flag run that we've seen here yet, with only about 7 laps or so before we see maybe some drivers coming down into pit road. What do you think, Jacob? Are we going to see some drivers kind of take that 40-lap strategy for pit road, or do you think some drivers are going to kind of go along with the strategy that we spoke of earlier, about 50 to 53 laps?
I think you may see a mixed bag with that. Again, we've seen roughly about 2 seconds, 1.5 to 2 seconds of fall off so far from everybody's fast lap to their current lap times. So continuing on with that, you're likely going to be giving up a lot of time if somebody does come in for fresh tires. to try to stretch that on one stop. And with these green flag stops, green flag racing still happening and not having the benefits of having caution laps to kind of save on fuel, we almost have a moment there as you see the 76 James Duke work on the bottom side. Robert Cook and David Santini able to work by him though with little issue. It's going to be tough for drivers to save that much in the way of fuel. They're going to have to do that by finding ways, maybe using the clutch as they enter into the corners, drop the RPMs, reduce some fuel consumption that way, maybe try to find a little more draft behind fellow competitors, lift a little bit earlier, get back onto the throttle a little bit later. All different ways that they'll employ to save it, which in turn is also going to add some precious time to their lap times, kind of exaggerate that difference between what you're trying to do with somebody saving tires. So I really wouldn't be surprised to see the majority of your front runners coming in and probably anywhere from the next 6 to 10 laps or so. But it wouldn't shock me to see maybe somebody like a Matt Knight, who was kind of towards the top 10 and now falls back after a few issues, try it. Maybe something like the 84 Kyle Mooring, 07 Chocolate Ball Drop, somebody like that that's going to need something drastic to be able to jump the amount of time that they are behind the race leaders here. Kind of got almost expected to go green at this point. We have not seen any cautions outside of our stage break tonight. Alludes to the quality of these drivers, but also alludes to maybe the type of race style that we're going to see here. We're still seeing some good competitive racing as you see the 07 of Charles Waldrop trying to work to the inside of Barry Stevens to fall back in line just ahead of the 84 Kyle Mooring. They work their way back into turn number 1. Waldrop working down to that bottom side. Got Stevens and Mooring on the outside. Stevens kind of comes down a little bit off of the wall, maybe try to pinch Waldrop a little bit. Waldrop continuing to close that gap, now just down to 0.2 of a second behind Stevens. He dives into the middle this time through 3 and 4. Stevens will working the outside line. Looks like Waldrop gets a really good run out of turn number 4, cuts the gap now down to 1/10.5. So finds half of that gap right there in 3 and 4. Only in the wake of Barry Stevens, so they work their way back into turn number 1. Now he pushes up the track. I think that might have been a misstep there. Might have overdrove the entry, saw a chance to try to get to the inside of Stevens and start to put that pass on and just overdrove it a little bit, Mason. So those are the mistakes we got to watch for, because not only does it cost you some time to your competitors, it's also going to stress out those tires a little bit more than you want. And if you've got somebody close behind you, either you make contact with them and bring out a caution, or you possibly could lose a spot after making that mistake.
Yeah, and especially with this being kind of the longest green flag run of the race here, it's almost as if drivers are kind of being caught off guard a little bit, not being used to the fact that this is the longest that anyone has been able to go out on a single set of tires so far, and right now with only 1 lap before we hit that 40-lap margin, it actually, add another 2 laps and that'll be actually 40 full laps since the last time we came down into pit road. But already seeing some drivers just getting a little bit squirrely here and there, especially on entry into the turn. Drivers not able to get themselves slowed down enough to be able to get themselves turned in to be able to make the turn effectively. That's, here we go, the 25 Matt Knight. I think that's you mentioned it earlier on in the beginning of the broadcast, Jacob, how when you're stuck on that inside of someone on the outside there going through the turns, how you have to wait, almost kind of slow yourself down a little bit more to be able to make that turn effectively. And I think that might have been a little bit of a good example of that there. But pit stops are underway. We've got Evan Longacre, Billy Fitzgerald, Kyle Mollering all down here in pit lane, getting themselves a fresh set of tires as well as fuel. And it looks like Evan Longacre is going to be the first driver to make the full stop here up on to the right side. So, pit stops underway here, Jacob. Who do you think? Well, let's just wait and see. I'm curious to see how this is going to play out.
Yeah, as we see a host of drivers now come in. It's kind of a monkey see, monkey do. Once one person comes in, every driver knows that that car is going to have an advantage, and they're going to need to come in relatively soon unless they're subscribing to a one-stop strategy the rest of the race. So I find it hard to believe if Colby Baber doesn't start thinking about coming in the next couple of laps. He's still out there clicking on laps. The other thing, too, we need to watch out for, Mason, these drivers have run the longest run of the night, as you alluded to. So these drivers are going to have some worn tires, a little bit of hotter tires. It's going to mean less grip. So getting on the pit road, if they're trying to maximize that entry speed, getting late on the brakes could potentially cause them to either lock the tires up or possibly go into a slide, which if it doesn't bring out a caution could still cost them precious seconds, because seconds lost on pit road are worth even more than seconds lost on the racing surface. So I have to keep an eye out for that as we start to see green flag stops cycle their way through, moving some drivers up through the standings here. Looking at the 78 of Barry Stevens, he's still staying out just behind the 25 of Matt Knight. Also has the 07 of Chuck Waldrop coming in. So a couple drivers trying to come in early on, take advantage of those fresh tires. You pick up some lap times on their competitors. Some other drivers electing to stay out. Maybe some people kind of a little gun shy to pull the trigger, Mason, in fear that if a caution comes out, they could be trapped a lap down, and that could hurt the chances of finishing near the front the rest of tonight.
Yeah, and I think it's a reasonable fear. Don't get me wrong, and knowing, kind of having that in the back of your mind as well, knowing that there was, I believe now, there was only 2 cautions. Okay, so only that one caution before the stage break. You almost kind of are maybe anticipating 1 or 2 more to come out. It's a constant battle as a driver, being able to kind of accommodate for those kind of situations. But here we go. Colby Baber making his way down through pit lane. And right now, he has been the driver to beat here tonight. So once things are all said and done here for Baber down in pit lane, really it's going to come down to when Evan Longacre, Billy Fitzgerald, David Santini, Kyle Mollering are able to kind of work their way up to the rear of Colby Baber here. Let's see how quickly he's able to get in and out of pit road here. There's only 2 positions separating those drivers, so he might get himself caught up either just ahead of Evan Longacre or kind of in the mix of those drivers there, as makes his pit exit now out back onto the race surface.
Robert Cook still your race leader now, as again we are seeing more green flag stops here on lap number 87. Got a Gunningsman in the 9 up to 2nd, Chris Hansen the 20, 3rd. At night, 4th, Jeffrey Meyer rounding out your top 5. We see the 90s, Stephen Davis also on pit road. So we'll see once this cycles through if Evan Longacre, Billy Fitzgerald, David Santini, Kyle Mollering, if they're able to gain any time on Colby Baber, or if Baber's able to reassume the race lead. Those 4 drivers I mentioned in about 6 laps earlier than Colby Baber. So you're going to see Baber start to click off some quick laps. He's going to be a little bit faster than those drivers, but is he going to have enough of a gap, or is that early pit stop, what we call short pitting, going to be enough that those few laps earlier with fresh tires and faster lap times allowed them to jump? Those 3 that pitted together all battling right there on the track. You see 95 of Longacre working down to the bottom near the grass in front of the 79 of Santini. Outside of him is Fitzgerald. So got a tight battle back here is for the 12th, 13th, and 14th place on the track. Drivers kind of in their own little area, but they've also got the 10 of Colby Baber just lurking off the backside of them. He's taking advantage of those fresh tires, trying to close that gap up quickly. Last time by was about a 10th and a half faster. We go on board with Baber as he looks at those 3 just up ahead. See them almost running in a line. Baber working all the way down to the inside grass on the front stretch. Come back into turn number 1. He works the high side. He's going to be lined up behind the 22. Fitzgerald trying to work his way there. Fitzgerald's going to look to the inside of Evan Longacre. They're going to go side by side back into turn number 3. You also see Santini working to the inside. That's the the 9 of Gunningsman, who is yet to pit. He is your race leader as 64 Robert Cook finally peels off. So Gunningsman might have been one of those drivers, Mason, that may be trying to stretch it on one stop. It's definitely going to be a tight strategy for sure. There's going to be a lot of fuel saving needing to be done. Whether or not that's going to come out working off in the end will remain to be seen. But you could see the power of Colby Baber and those fresher tires. He's got just Santini left to go to work by this. This could be potentially the battle for the race lead right here as they work their way back onto the front stretch.
So, doing a little bit of mathematicals in my head here, Jacob, just thinking about what Chad Gunningsman here in the number 9 car is doing here. Again, currently the race leader at this point in time. still hasn't come down into pit road, and this lap is actually 50 laps since the last time he was down into pit road. So right in that margin, right in that neighborhood of what we were kind of predicting earlier in the broadcast here tonight. Now, the real question that I kind of have here, Jacob, or really kind of the, I guess, idea that I could have here for Chad Goodingsman is he perhaps maybe wanting to do 1 or 2 solid long runs, get in 2 50-lap runs, and then perhaps maybe make a final short pit stop towards the end to be able to do something. This is all theoretical here, but my point being here is that maybe Chad is kind of doing almost I don't even know what to call it here. He's got a very unique position for himself at this time, so I'm just wondering if maybe he's kind of able to work that in his favor here, as right now, I mean, he's got nearly 5 seconds from himself and Matt Knight, so it's not exactly like he's hurting for pace at this point. I mean, he's definitely getting tracked down, but not by a huge margin, so I don't know. This might work out for Chad if he plays it right. And right now, he just clicked off 2 more laps, so I don't know how much longer he's going to be able to last on those tires here, but he is definitely trying. He's demonstrating the long-run strategy here tonight at Kansas.
I think trying to split it into 2 more stops really doesn't make a whole load of sense if you're going to try to run 2 very long stints, almost a full fuel run, and then a very short one, because that last one, most you'd be thinking about doing is maybe right side tires and a little splash of fuel, which is just going to be too costly for the amount of time it's going to take. Recalculating the math, obviously we had some green flag or caution laps after they came out of pit road after the stage break, which typically you can run about 2 caution laps for the amount of fuel you would use in 1 green flag lap. So drivers probably put on a lap, maybe 2 laps worth of green flag fuel after pitting. We see the 33 of John Bender bails out, has to come to pit road. So Goodingsman reasonably, again, probably needing to get to somewhere around 102, maybe 103, give himself 58 laps or so left to play it safe. I think he's going to be shooting for that 1-stop strategy if he can. One thing I want to point out, his last time by a 33.01 second lap for number 10 machine of Colby Baber, able to do a 31.75 second lap, so almost a 1.5 second difference there, and he's only about 22.5 seconds behind. So we could very easily see Colby Baber take over that lead, and then the issue is going to be Goodingsman's going to have to try to get back by, get the lap back, and then potentially execute that again a second time. So I gotta think it's definitely a valiant effort, and like I said, race winning call, maybe not necessarily, but if you think about where Goodingsman was running when he elected to start this, somewhere around that 13th, 14th range, if he can find himself into the top 10, then that was still a better strategy than executing a 2-stop strategy. So drivers kind of looking at maybe realistically where can they finish, Mason, what kind of pace do they have, do they even have anything to contend with the drivers in front of them? If they don't, then sometimes these alternative strategies can be good to play, roll the dice a little bit, see what you can do. I got a feeling he's not feeling real comfortable in the car right now. I'm sure those tires are definitely being pushed to their backs, running on little rubber life left, so it's probably not an enjoyable experience inside that cockpit right now. We go on board with him. It looks like he's actually fairly comfortable, not really too much counter steer on the wheel. Didn't really see it crank too far to the left. That's kind of the key to see how well is that car handling. If the driver's putting a lot of wheel into it, then we know that car's not really turning as well as he would like it to. But looks like just as I say that, he's going to be coming on the pit road, so going to leave himself with about 60 laps or so to go once he gets back onto the racing surface. Certainly could be doable, as he ran just under that for this fuel run. Maybe needing to save a little bit more. I got a feeling, Mason, coming in at this point in time, if we don't get a caution, and he'd hate to have to come in for a splash of fuel at the end of tonight's event.
Yeah, I think you're right there. It was a bold strategy, Cotton, but you know what? I had to throw it out there. You never know. But Matt Knight here, Jeffrey Meyer, Chuck Waldrop, meanwhile, I mean, they were all in that same category that Chad Gunningsman was in, as far as kind of seeing what the long run strategy was going to do here. And all three of these drivers, actually, as I say that, Jeffrey Meyer dropping down into pit lane, but Matt Knight, Chuck Waldrop, they're going to take it another lap around here. Really going to see what these tires can do here. And like you were saying, trying to make this a kind of a one-stop strategy or one-stop race, like you were mentioning before. But 25 machine dropping down to the bottom of the track, and I think that's going to mean he's coming down into pit lane. I don't think he is too happy with how that car is handling. And I got to say, with how long these drivers are staying out and how easily they're making it look to handle these cars with how old their tires are, phenomenal. They make it look so easy.
Yeah, certainly doing a great job. The fact that we've been able to get through an entire green flag run without any issues. Oftentimes, again, drivers have a lot of issues getting onto pit road at somewhere like Kansas here, just carrying so much speed through the corners, trying to maximize that entry into the corner, maybe getting on the brakes a little bit too late or a little too hard, blocking them up and spinning around. We see Colby Baker, though, able to cycle back to the race lead. He's now about a second and a half ahead of the 28 of Jamie Knopf. So looks like right now he might have gained a little bit of time coming in. Jamie Knopf actually pitting 1 lap later than Colby Baber did. So Colby Baber, in essence, short pitted Jamie Knopf by 1 lap, even though he didn't short pit Santini, Fitzgerald, and Longacre. So that's kind of that power of coming in 1 lap earlier, getting in an extra lap when you have a faster lap time compared to your current competitors staying out there and running that little bit of a slower lap time. So that's kind of showing in practice right now, although Knopf trying to close that gap back down. Check at the line as they both come across. We'll see what the lap times looks like, a 32.33 for both drivers. So nearly identical lap times. Baber just kind of in that range. He's just trying to click off some laps. I would expect him probably in somewhere in the area of 125-ish, maybe another 40 lap run, somewhere around there. Get his last pit stop out of the race, out of the way for tonight's event. Santini up to third, though. He's been able to make that strategy execute very well. So recovering really well after that miscue on our stage break. Finds himself third. Fitzgerald in fourth, recovers a spot after battling with Evan Longacre. You see Longacre, though, 2 car lengths back. He's out 0.8 of a second behind Fitzgerald. They work their way back into turn number 1. Longacre still committing to that bottom side. He's been one of the few drivers, Mason, that seems to be a little more comfortable, although as I say that, a little bit of a slide there out of turn 2, a little loose, so that right rear tire is not going to be too happy with Longacre. That extra slide, that heat, they're going to hurt that car, make it a little bit tougher for the next couple laps to get off the corners. These drivers need to be so careful to try to push it right on the edge of the tire's grip level, but still be able to keep that car tracking straight so that A, they keep the speed up, and B, they don't really slide those tires across the track. The more you slide them, you're going to start to build heat into it, and as you get those tires hotter and hotter, they don't like to grip the racing surface as well. It just makes it tougher to turn it and then get back onto the throttle to get out of the corner. So we're seeing a little bit of a different strategy here than, again, I think Santini, Fitzgerald, Longacre are all able to make it on one more stop. It's not an issue of that. It's just a matter of, are they going to be able to execute that again, continue to close that gap up, or are we just going to see a 2-car battle for the win between Baber and Knopf? And who knows, maybe Gunningsman or somebody else that did stay out could make it all the rest of the way on fuel if they're able to save enough, and we could see a little bit of a wild card potentially come in here before the night is over, Mason.
Yeah, it'll be exciting to see that play out here, as right now we're just kind of tuning in with some of the drivers around the racetrack at this moment. We're looking at also the track map on the bottom right-hand side of our screen. You can see where all of your drivers, your favorite drivers, happen to be placed on the track at this moment, as this is so far the longest green flag run that we've seen here tonight. Everyone fairly well settled out at this moment, just clicking off laps and taking positions where they possibly can, and trying to bring down these gaps that we're currently seeing. I mean, right now the closest battles that we have at this moment is between Chris Hansen, Chad Gunningsman, as well as Kyle Mollering. At this moment, Chris Hansen, Chad Gunningsman, the number 9 machine, down onto the inside of the 20 GameStop machine through turn 3, and coming out of turn 4 onto the front straightaway. Gunningsman, he's definitely on wheels here, back up into that 7th place spot where he started here, just trying to click off some more solid laps here. And, kind of taking a look at some of these drivers that opted to stay out just a little bit longer than the rest of the field here. Gooningsman, one of them. Matt Knight, Chuck Waldrop. I mean, we're starting to see, it almost looks like we're seeing a little bit of pace difference, even with those 10-lap different tires that we are seeing here in the top 10. Not by a whole lot, but it's almost as if it's just enough. And looking at timing and scoring, Gooningsman, believe it or not, he's actually tracking down the top 5 here by quite a bit. I mean, if he continues on this pace, I can almost imagine Gooningsman going to be back up here in the top 5 within, I would say, maybe the next, well, he's got about 5 seconds, 4.5 seconds between himself and Robert Cook. So not exactly like he's going to be able to magically appear in the top 5 here, but with that slight difference in pace here, I could almost imagine that he'll be back up there by at least lap 130. Let's hope, at least.
That's that power of fresh tires that I was speaking to earlier. That's what's allowing him to turn laps that are somewhere in the 9/10 to full second range faster than his competitors around him. The difference is, though, Mason, again, if he's gonna try to stretch this without stopping again, he's gonna start to see a lot of fall off later on in the run. Whereas everybody around him that pitted somewhere between lap 80 and lap 90 is gonna be able to come in again, get those fresh tires, and then push hard again. So it's gonna be this balancing act where it swings towards one side and back to the other. You know, Goonie's been right now kind of on those fresher tires, being able to take some of that race time, that gap, cut that down, run faster laps, but he's going to have to give some of that back later on in the run when he's trying to stretch it the rest of the way and they've all come into pit. So it's what makes this really interesting to see how this call plays out. That's why a lot of these crew chiefs get paid a lot of money in real life to do it. They are crunching numbers, frying their brains, trying to figure out what's the best call, what are their competitors going to do, and how can they adjust to that. Some of these drivers here tonight also have crew chiefs on board with them, trying to help them maximize that race strategy as well. So it's a tough task, for one thing, just to be in the cockpit of these machines, wheeling them around the track. It's another thing to add crew chief duties on top of that, trying to calculate that race strategy, figure out what your competitors are going to do, and how can you beat them both on the track and driving as well as on the pit road in terms of strategy. We're looking above here as we go back into turn number 1. I believe that is the number 95. That is Evan Longacre. He's working that high side. He's about a second or so ahead of Robert Cook. About 3 seconds, 2.5 seconds ahead of Gooningsman, and he's about a second and a half back of Billy Fitzgerald. He occupies that 4th place spot currently. As you see, we go back through the field. There's Kyle Mooring and the 86 of Richard Malugani. These two both trying to execute a little bit different strategies. Mooring in on lap number 80, Malugani in on 88. So neither one of them, I don't think, are going to be able to go the rest of the race without stopping. But even there, a little bit of difference in strategy. As you see, Malugani trying to work the inside, going side by side with Mooring back into turn number 1. Malugani with his fresher tires able to grip on the bottom. Mooring working that high side. Malugani clears him in the middle of the corner, but Mooring gets a really good run out of the corner, so they go side by side. They're going to go side by side back into turn number 3. So again, we see green flag stops, kind of guys stretching out, but Mason, there's still battles all across the track happening right now as we near the 3/4 mark of tonight's race.
Yeah, and right now, kind of looking at things right now, Colby Baber, as well as Jamie Knopp, David Santini, Billy Fitzgerald, I mean, they're about 10 laps or so, give or take 5 laps in that number. They're pretty close to coming down through pit lane here at least one more time before the end of the race here tonight. So we're waiting to see that happen here tonight. And like you were saying here earlier, Chad Gooningsman is one of those drivers that has, amongst 5 others, I believe, that have really kind of set the long run pace here tonight. But will it pay out for Chad Gooningsman? Probably not. But it's really great to see the different strategies being played out amongst the field here, and just kind of testing the water, seeing what they all can do here with these open setup cars. You know, not every day that you get the opportunity to kind of tweak things and be able to modify a car to drive the way that you want it to, and see how fast you can actually take it around a racetrack. But as we continue along here, lap 18 of 160, just 2 laps before we reach the final 40 laps, essentially the final stage if you will, of the race here tonight. So far, so good for the top 3, the top 5, what have you. I mean, Colby Baber has just had an incredibly dominant lead here in tonight's race. Jamie Knopf, a very valiant fight up there into second place and holding, as well as David Santini up into third place, the current hard charger of the race, up 15 spots from where he started here tonight. So while it's not exactly the side-by-side action that we were predicting towards the beginning of the broadcast, but it is still solid racing for these drivers at this moment, as right now starting to see the fall off of some of these drivers' tires come into play here, as Jamie Knopf, we saw this happen before. I believe it was the last kind of pit stop that we had here. Jamie was starting to reel in the 10 driver of Colby Baber. That might also be attributed to the fact now that we have lap traffic being involved here. But the point being here, Jamie's kind of got this it's really good thing going from where halfway through his stint or towards the later half, he's able to kind of really turn things up a notch and start to track down the leader, but still sitting at just about 3/4 of a second away from the 10 driver. As we get closer to that kind of pit window here for these drivers, we'll have to see which one of them is going to come out ahead of the other once that is all said and done.
Lap traffic also starting to come into play for your front runners, as you see Colby Baber, momentary mishap, gets into the outside retaining wall. That's going to allow a change for the lead, as Baber might have an issue. Looks like he's got just a tiny bit of right side damage there above the right front headlight. You see that right on that hood area down low, so maybe a little bit of handling issues now going on for Colby Baber. That's the first miscue we've seen out of him tonight. It allows Jamie Knopf to take over your race lead, and he quickly takes advantage of it, opening it up to a full second. Not just in front of the 50 of Jeffrey Myers, so not sure if lap traffic played into the problems for Baber there at all, or if he just had a little miscue on his own. But that's what I was talking about, as we were starting to see that happen while we were going there as well. The 90 of Stephen Davis coming into pit road, as long as the 07 of Chuck Waldrop. So a couple drivers starting to run their final green flag pit stop for tonight's event, or what is expected to be a final green flag stop. That's our first lead change tonight since Baber's been able to take over the lead. So we'll see how Knopf's able to take advantage of that fresh air. If, again, that fresh air is just going to be that valuable as he pulls away. But looking back at the 22 of Billy Fitzgerald, Robert Cook, a little bit faster than Fitzgerald. Cook on slightly older or fresher tires, about 10 laps fresher. So that's a little bit of an advantage there. And you also see to the inside, that's going to be the number 90 of Stephen Davis working by Fitzgerald. Davis did just come in on lap number 120, so fresh tires really showing into effect right there. You could just see Davis able to work by Fitzgerald like he was almost standing still in a way. Colby Baber electing to come on the pit road. I think with that time he lost to the race leader, electing now is the best time to come in, maybe try to take advantage of the fresh tires, get that lead back. David Santini also electing to come on the pit road. So we're starting to see right around that 40 lap mark, maybe 43 or so, drivers coming in. They're going to leave themselves with about 34 to 35 laps left to go tonight after they get their service. See if that's going to force a number of other runners in the front on. Would expect Jamie Knopf to be in soon, as well as the 64 of Robert Cook, 95 of Longacre, possibly even the 20 of Chris Hansen. See how this goes to play, and then this is going to put Gunningsman back into the race lead once it cycles through. So Mason, this is where we're really going to get to see the merits of, can Gunningsman execute that long run stop strategy? Maybe Matt Knight's able to do it. Maybe the 50 of Jeffrey Myers able to do it. And if they're able to do it, where are they going to come out? As Baber works his way back out onto the racing service, you see the 95 of Evan Longacre on there. Just as I predicted, basically a lap later, Jamie Knopf on his way. I think he knew once Colby Baber came on the pit road, he only had a matter of laps before he needed to come in to not possibly give up that race lead once it cycles through. So racing closing stages of the race, next round of green flag pit stops. Let's see how this plays out. Who's going to come out ahead after these all cycle through?
Yeah, right now things are definitely looking interesting as far as strategies are concerned, as Chad Gunningsman, I mean, Currently, the driver taking the long run strategy to its, well, to its absolute max here, as well as Robert Cook, Evan Longacre, well, not Evan Longacre, Evan Longacre, Chris Hansen, actually, they are still out on the same set of tires from lap 80 and lap 88, respectively. So they're going to be coming in here relatively soon, but for Gooningsman, I'm going to be expecting him to, he's still got another 10 or so laps before he needs to come down into pit lane. So, I mean, he's still going to be out there, going to be able to click off some laps, but like you said, Jacob, I mean, he's going to come down into pit road pretty much right at probably the most inconvenient time of the race. Those final 20 laps, everyone else is still going to be clicking off laps at that point in time, and at that point, I mean, I would imagine that those drivers are going to be about halfway through their tread at that moment and going to be able to still keep up a pretty decent pace. So I don't think that, I'm not 100% confident that Gooningsman will be able to kind of compete with that once that comes around, but who knows? Gooningsman might have something up his sleeve here in the number 9 machine. We're just going to have to wait and see until that happens here tonight. But lap 130 of 160, I want to take this moment here just one more time to give a shout out, give a thank you to our series sponsors, Rapid Fired Pizza, as well as Old School Ninjas. Big shout out, big thank you to both of our sponsors here for the 2022 MSRA Rapid Fire Pizza Nationals. We wouldn't be able to do this without them. And thank you to thank you to the league, as well as to all of the viewers who come in and support the drivers, the league, what have you. Great to have every single one of you watching week in and week out, as this is now a live broadcasted series as of last week. So, as we continue along here, Evan Longacre is making his way down into pit lane right now. Tuning along here with Matt Knight, Chris Hansen. Actually, that's not Chris Hansen. That is the number 20 machine of Chris. Oh, that was Chris Hansen. Okay, it's a little bit timing and scoring giving me all sorts of confusion here, but either way, either how, we're still kind of expecting a good chunk of drivers to make their way through pit road here in just a few laps, but really the kind of key driver that we're looking at right now, Colby Baber, obviously having led the majority of the race here tonight after being pushed back by Jamie Knopf, who now actually sits just behind Colby Baber here in 7th place at this moment. So I don't know if that's going to affect Jamie here on his run, knowing that now he's got about a second and a half to catch up here to Colby Baber, as we have a caution. James Duke. Oh, the 76 machine getting a little bit loose out of turn 2, it looks like. Bringing out the caution here for the 3rd time here tonight. Let's take a look at the instant replay and see what happened. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Multiple cars getting unsettled here. Jacob, why don't you walk us through here and explain to me what is going on here?
So we're going to see James Duke working his way through the center of turn 1 and 2. He's working the outside line right now. Try to see, it looks like, let's go on board, see if we can diagnose what happened. All right, there's the moment he cut down. The car gets loose. He's got a counter steer to the right to try to correct it. That car at this point is getting unsettled. I think he might have thrown a bit too much right wheel to try to correct it. And he's just kind of sawing back and forth, seesawing back, and the car's just continuing to rock itself left and right. And then as soon as he had, I believe that was the, I think it was the 90 or the 51 of Howerton right behind him. It loosened him up and he got sent all the way around. I don't think there was any contact there. I think the car behind him was just trying to get on the brakes to avoid him and checked up, spun themselves as well. But it looked like he might have just cut down a bit too hard trying to get out of turn number 2. And that just enough of that little hard cut on older tires was enough to upset him. So actually, he was on lap 25, so maybe a little bit of fresher thing. But this plays such an interesting strategy, and like this played perfectly. That Gooningsman and Meyer, and Matt Knight, they're able to come in, take their tires. They're now going to be effectively on the same strategy as Colby Baber, Jamie Knopf, David Santini, Billy Fitzgerald, without losing the track position or the time. You know, they're going to be restarting right behind them. But the interesting thing is, Knopf could have potentially come on and take another set. I don't know. This is so this just threw a wrench. I mean, this made this great, and this actually worked out for these guys almost even better because now they don't even have to question whether or not they have enough fuel to make it to the end, and it actually is going to put him still rolling off P3 right now. So he could not have played that any better. Very fortunate break, but to put himself in that position, take that gamble, it sometimes works out in this case, but it's going to provide for a really interesting thing. The other thing I want to call out to, Mason, you alluded to it. Colby Baber, by product of being able to pit 2 laps sooner than Jamie Knopf, was actually able, when he was about a second and a half behind Jamie Knopf pre-pit stop, he's actually able to gain about 3 seconds and be about a second and a half of Jamie Knopf. So that gap now is erased, and he's on 2 lap older tires, but we've seen him do really well at controlling restarts when he selects the right lane, getting away from the field. That just shows you the power that that green flag stop had. We continued green and somebody like Gunningsman or Matt Knight maybe not able to make it, that could have been the race winning call right there that Jamie or Colby Baber made to pit just a couple laps sooner. So it's going to be a sprint to the finish. We're going to have likely somewhere around 23 laps or so to go once we get the green flag back in the air. But Mason, we're just heating up for this great finish here tonight.
160 laps of action here at Kansas Speedway, and it has been phenomenal. 25 laps still left to go here. We still got about, just like Jacob said, about two laps to go here before we take that green flag once more for, assumingly, the last time here tonight of the 2022 MSRA Rapid Fire Pizza Nationals. I gotta say, this has been quite a race here tonight for Colby Baber. I mean, he has just been just dominating tonight's race, and I'm not sure if, he has just got a perfect setup for himself, if he, happened to smuggle in some NOS onto the racetrack, or, whatever the case may be. Maybe he snuck in a supercharger in that thing. I don't know. But anyway, point being here, Baber is just showing his dominance here tonight. And, I mean, Jamie Knopf, he has put on a very great effort to be able to put himself up here into the top 3, as well as Chad Gunningsman now, who, like you said, kind of put himself in the luckiest spot he could be in, having this caution come out at probably the best possible time for him, knowing that he still had to come down into pit road right around this margin anyway. To have that yellow flag come out and kind of work out in his favor. He's going to be restarting in third on the inside, or I believe actually the outside of row 2, as I believe Colby will prefer to take that outside lane here once we go back to the restart, as that seems to be the trend here tonight. So with that all in mind, I mean, Jamie Knopf, I really hope to see some challenges here to the number 10 car of Colby Baber, and really give him a run for his money here in these final 20-ish laps of tonight's race. And for Chad Gunningsman, Robert Cook, Jeffrey Meyer, Matt Knight, I mean, they're all going to be challenging for that lead or even a top 3 finish here tonight. But I think, if I was Colby Baber, consistency is key. That's always the name of the game, and I think if he just continues to do what he has done here all race long, I don't think he's going to have too much trouble here. But again, Jamie Knopf, the 28 machine, he has shown some incredible drive here. Chad Gunningsman, incredible long run strategies here being played out as the pace car makes its way back down into pit lane. We head back into the Geico restart zone. The green flag drops.
It looks like they have a botched restart. You can see there was a ton of cars lined up on the inside, and nobody really lined up double file on the outside. So I think they extended this caution to try to get everybody lined back up. We want a little bit of a nicer restart here. Critical moments. The pace car going to be pulling back out on the track, get everybody regrouped. Notice that, and I'm sure race control noticed that as well, that ton of cars lined up on the inside, only 3 cars lined up on the outside. No, folks, we did not go back to the late 90s era of NASCAR racing where lap drivers were lined up on the inside, lead lap cars on the outside. This is going back to lead lap cars up in the front double files. So take a moment to get them re-racked here. So make the remaining laps they do have once they go green even more critical. It's going to be really interesting to see, can somebody like Chad Gunningsman or Jeffrey Meyer or Matt Knight, who find themselves now in the top 5, sustained up there, are they going to have the pace to hang with these guys? We know drivers like Baber, Knopf, Fitzgerald, Longacre, Santini, they've all got the pace to get to the front, although Santini Restarting a little bit further back, he's back in the 14th spot. We know some of those drivers have the pace to stay up front. We'll see if some of these newcomers to the front, now that they're going to be on fresher tires, are they going to be able to hang there? It looks like we are going to be good and going green this time. It's like we still have that lineup issue, but they're going to throw the green flag anyways. We have 22 to go as they cross the line. Colby Baber once again executing another perfect restart, gets himself out to a quick lead, has about 2-car length, 3-car length advantage as they work back into turn number 1. Colby Baber, or Jamie Knopf working the inside. Just outside of him is the 9 of Gooniesman. Gooniesman taking his first time to run with these guys up front. Maybe give them a bit of a scare. Say, whoa, guys, I've got the pace to hang with you. Don't count me out yet. Running in that Bruzy number 9 Chevy Camaro. A little bit of a wiggle there, though, coming out of turn 4. The car's fighting for grip. Got a little loose there. Cost him a bit of time as Jamie Knopf going to quickly try to track down Colby Baber. Got a half a car length separating those two. Now they're going to go side by side back into turn number 1. Colby Baber working the extreme outside line. Jamie Knopf diving down to the bottom. It's going to be a battle as they go down the backstretch. Knopf working again the inside line into turn number 3. Baber on the outside lane markers working the highest part of the track, steepest part of the banking. Is Knopf going to be able to clear him as they work off of turn number 4? Yes, he does. Clears Colby Baber, takes over the lead. Car length advantage. They go back into turn number 1. Mason, I gotta wonder, I'm willing to bet Colby Baber did not fix that damage on the right side. You still see that on the hood. Is that a product right there of that little bit of aero difference and maybe a possible suspension issue there for Colby Baber that was just enough for Jamie Knopf to take advantage and grab the lead here with 20 to go?
Yeah, and I was just thinking that to myself here as well, just seeing it's pretty clear here that Colby he's being affected by something here. Something is not quite right with that number 10 machine. Jamie Knopf, I mean, it almost seemed like it was effortless to be able to make that pass here, as now Jad Koenigsman going to make a move down onto the inside lane as we come out of turn 2 onto the back straightaway. They're going to be side by side heading towards turn 3, and I mean, I want to take a moment here. Let's ride on board here with Colby Baber and just kind of get an idea if he's fighting this car a little bit more than maybe he should be. I mean, we're seeing quite a bit of steering input here, especially let's take a look here going through turn 1. It almost seems like he's kind of fighting that car, wanting to go up to the top side of the track here.
Looks like the biggest issue that you're noticing through 1 and 2 is you saw Chad Koenigsman just pull away from him. Part of that could be the little bit of fresher tires out of Koenigsman, able to pit under this most recent caution, whereas Baber had pitted about 10 laps before that. But it's just the difference in the center of the corner. Baber just not able to quite rotate and get the car to turn through the center of the corner as he's off the throttle or working a partial throttle compared to Koenigsman. Just does not have the grip there in the center of the corner. That's where he really seems to be losing a lot of time. It allows those competitors up front to just pull away. So I think that's where that suspension issue is really kind of showing its face. While it manifests itself with Knopf able to make the pass off of turn number 4 down the front stretch a couple laps ago, that really was set up by the difference of speed in the center of the corners. You see Matt Knight, the 25, gaining on him. So it'll be really interesting to see if Colby Baber can try to hold this car inside the top 5. I think having that late race caution with the damage he has is probably one of the worst things he could have seen, especially because, again, he executed that pit strategy so well. It's just coming into effect now that the field is all grouped back together. There's a lot of drivers taking advantage of that. And these drivers that I mentioned finding themselves up in the top 5 first time, like really showing what they've actually got that they can hang up here. Gooniesman running 2nd, Matt Knight running 3rd, Jeffrey Meyer running 5th. You got Robert Cook trying to fight his way into the top 5 as well. But we've got Gooniesman tracking down Jamie Knopf. He's got that gap to just 0.2 of a second. Car length and a half separates them as they work their way out of turn number 2 back onto the backstretch. Gooniesman's working the middle line through 1 and 2. Knopf working the bottom side. Knopf able to pull away a little bit, has the gap up to about 3.5 of a second as they work back into turn number 3. Both drivers working to that bottom white line there. We're going to pan back as Colby Baker continues to lose spots. Matt Knight was able to work by him, and now he's got both the 50 of Jeffrey Meyer as well as the 64 of Robert Cook eyeing him up. We're going to go potentially 3 wide through turn 1. Almost a moment of 3 wide there as Robert Cook backs out a little bit to sit behind Jeffrey Meyer. These two, though, smelling blood in the water with a wounded Colby Baber machine, trying to take advantage of that. Meyer works to the high side behind Baber. Robert Cook going to try to take advantage of that, dives down to the bottom. He's working the inside lane. Baber, Meyer working the outside lane as they come out of turn number 4. We're going to have just 13 laps to go as Knopf crosses the line. We've got great action and just a few laps left to go, Mason.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I don't think I've been this close to the edge of my seat so far yet this race, and right now things are, I mean, they're just stewing away at this point. Jamie Knopf coming away with a rather impressive lead here thus far. Chad Koenigsmann kind of trailing along behind him in that second place spot. These two drivers have managed to work up nearly just about a second of a gap between themselves and the rest of the field here at this point in time. Matt Knight in that third place spot in the number 25 machine, trying to do all that he can here to keep himself as close as possible to these drivers. But even as he's doing that, he's got himself a comfortable gap between third and fourth place, with Robert Cook handling that fourth place spot at this moment. So the top three here, I mean, aside from Jamie Knopf, Chad Koenigsmann, it's relatively comfortable up here with 12 laps left to go. I mean, we're still 11 laps as we cross the line. It's still plenty of racing left here, and it looks like Chad Koenigsmann, I mean, I don't know, Jacob. I think that late race caution that we saw here definitely played in the favor of the number 9 car. And I mean, unfortunately for Colby Baber, that I almost have to assume that that little bit of contact that he made, I almost want to say it was somewhere in turn 4, if I recall correctly. But anyway, the point being here is that Baber definitely is suffering from some mechanical damage to that 10 machine. Whether it's some sort of suspension issue to that front right tire, it's definitely affecting his pace, and he's not able to retain that same pace that we saw him dominate with throughout this race here early on. But currently still holding on to a 5th place spot at this moment as Jeffrey Meyer, Evan Longacre get themselves stacked up right behind the number 10 machine heading through turn 3. Meyer down onto the inside as well as Evan Longacre taking that bottom lane as well, seeing that Jeffrey Meyer starting to pull away from the side of the number 10 of Colby Baber here. So, man, what an interesting development of events here for Colby throughout this race. I mean, going from just being absolutely untouchable to now just feeling like a bag of bricks being thrown down the river.
All you have to do is look at both the number 9 of Chad Koenigsmann and the number 10 of Colby Baber to see two opposite ends of the spectrum. One, Koenigsmann caught the best break he possibly could have. That caution could not have come out at a better time, and he is making the most of it, still battling just off the rear bumper of Jamie Knopf. Colby Baber, on the other hand, not wanting to see that caution at all, executed pit strategy to perfection, jumped Jamie Knopf, had a 2.5 lead, was going to try to cycle his way through. He was catching the 9 of Chad Koenigsmann. Caution comes out at the worst time for him, puts himself back in a spot where he's very vulnerable with that damage. Really didn't have a way to fix it. If he had tried to fix it at all, he would have lost so many positions on the track that it would not have been worth it. So just two opposite ends of the spectrum. It's amazing to see how one driver's race completely made out of it, one driver's race completely ruined out of it. We've got a battle for the lead. This is Koenigsmann really showing everybody, I'm here to stay. I want to win. I want to get my first win of the season. He's back again at a 10.5. This is still that bubble I've kind of spoken to. The drivers cannot seem to punch through it. Knopf, knowing that that top line is so dominant with the momentum off the track, trying to take advantage of that, just stall out Koenigsmann. Koenigsmann working the inside lane. They're going to both come down to the grass across the start-finish line. 6 laps to decide this one here. These two are about a second ahead of Matt Knight, 2.5 ahead of Matt Knight. So plenty of room to race between just the two of them. Looks like Knopf getting a little bit more time off of turn 2, extends the gap out to just under half a second as Koenigsmann have it slightly slower corner that time. Looks like he might have experimented with the top side. Car balance maybe not quite what he was looking for there. And try to set another charge as they come across this line. We've got just 5 laps to go. Matt Knight working his way in the back. He's the 2.5 behind Jamie Knopf, trying to lurk in case anything does happen, maybe capitalize on a issue for one of these front two. Robert Cook only a half second back off of Matt Knight as well, sitting there in the 64 Wrangler Toyota Supra. So we've got some drivers, again, taking advantage of that caution. Other drivers like Colby Baker, who's now fallen back to 6 as Jeffrey Meyer's been able to work by him. See if Evan Longacre can take advantage of that as well as Baber continues to tumble through the field. Not that a 6th place running spot right now is very bad, but certainly far cry from where he was. Grabs the draft off the 33 of John Binder, but Longacre trying to set his sights before 4 laps to go. Sees a top 6 possible here. Wants to grab another spot. Still not where he started the race, not what he's looking for, but certainly a decent recovery. We're going to have a good battle brew here, though. They work their way back down the backstretch, just 4 laps to go. There'll be 3 at the line. It's going to be interesting, Mason, to see if anybody pushes it over the limit. We get a late race caution, maybe necessitating a green-white checker, or drivers are just going to settle in for fear of making a mistake and giving up a spot at such a late stage in the race when they can't really recover from it. And it's almost going to cause everybody to play it a little safe, and we just finish it out here.
Yeah, you know, the late race jitters, as I like to call them, I mean, it's I would say it at least happens at least once a week. Well, not once a week, but it happens every once in a while where, you know, we see drivers just get a little too excited, a little too nervous maybe in the final 3 laps of the race, final 2 laps of the race, and that's all it takes sometimes is just going side by side with someone. Your little nerves are on the edge, and that one critical mistake is all that it takes to bring that late stage caution out, bringing out the GWC. But right now it's 2 laps left to go, and I don't think we're going to see that late race caution here as Jamie Knopp, about a 1.25 seconds away from 2nd place Chad Gooningsman, about to come across the line here as he comes out of turn 4, bringing out the white flag here tonight at Kansas Speedway for the 2022 MSRA Rapid Fire Pizza Nationals. Right now, not a whole lot of battles happening for any positions up in the top 3. Got some drivers fighting for spots in the top 10. We've got Evan Longacre, Billy Fitzgerald kind of squabbling for spots here as we come down the back straightaway, along with Matt Knight heading through turn 3. And once we are out of 4, it'll be the checkered flag flying here tonight as we come across the line for the final time here at Kansas Speedway with Jamie Knopp in the 28 machine coming home with the win here tonight. Chad Gooningsman in 2nd place after a phenomenal strategy being played out here in a lucky caution being thrown out towards the later half of the race. Matt Knight keeping himself up here in the top 3, able to come home 3rd place with Robert Cook in 4th, Jeffrey Meyer in 5th. But we'll have a final running order here in just a moment as the rest of the field works their way across the checkered line and we get ready for our post-race interviews. All right, so here as we have the finishing order of tonight's race, we've already gone through the top 5, so we'll go ahead and go through the rest of the field. Colby Baber taking home 6th place here tonight. Evan Longacre in 7th, Billy Fitzgerald in 8th place, David Santini in 9th, Kyle Mollering in 10th place, Stephen Davis in 11th, Mike Howerton in 12th, John Binder in 13th, Barry Stevens in 14th, Richard Malagani in 15th, Robert Anderson in 16th, Jeff Hooper in 17th, James Duke in 18th as we move ourselves down the finishing order. Chris Hansen in 19th, Chuck Waldrop in 20th, Daniel Simmons in 21st, Braxton DeWeese in 22nd, Kenny Meadows in 23rd, Brent Wall in 24th, and Greg Newsom taking home 25th here tonight. So let's go ahead and get ready for our post-race interviews here tonight. And first up is going to be 3rd place driver Matt Knight taking home the podium here tonight. Let's see if we can find Mr. Matt Knight. There he is. Matt, sir, do you have a read?
I do. How are you going?
Doing all right, Matt. Welcome to the booth here tonight. Congratulations on your podium finish. What a race that we had here tonight. So in the beginning of the race, it was kind of, a little bit of an interesting jump start to the race. We had that first caution come out lap 10, stage break, and then towards the late half of the race, you're about, what was it, lap 110, 120, somewhere in that neighborhood. We had that late race caution come out, and everything seemed to change there. But for yourself, you started out in that, I believe that was 9th place here tonight, working your way up to a podium finish. I mean, what was your strategy coming into tonight, and how well do you think it played out for you?
So my strategy tonight was just to show up and do 160 laps. I didn't really think I was competitive. I muffed my qualifying. I forgot that it was only one lap, so my time registered was just a setup lap for a money second lap, so that's why I was so far back. I set myself up for a one-stop second stage, and it was right on the money. On the first stint, I actually ran out of fuel as I pulled into the pit, so I knew that there was going to be no one in front of me that could make it to the end on that set of tires. But then that late race caution really took it away from me.
Yeah, and I think a lot of drivers in your position, Chad Gunningsman as well, I think was amongst those drivers in that same kind of pit window that you were in as well. It just kind of really threw a big wrench in the gear for a lot of drivers here tonight, I think. And, I mean, particularly for Colby Baber as well, who we didn't catch it on camera on the broadcast, but he did manage to clip himself into the wall a little bit, and that just seemed to drop the pace of that 10 machine dramatically. And he was the driver to beat here tonight, and had that caution not existed here tonight, what kind of, I mean, what in that situation when you have a driver like Colby who is leading the field with 3.5 seconds, 4 seconds of a gap? I mean, what's kind of your game plan in that situation? Is it just keep on where you're going, or do you have something else in mind that
I knew that Colby, he was fast, which is why, but he didn't have the fuel to get to the end, so he was always making 2 stops, and the undercut Kansas, the drop off is just too quick. It doesn't drop off a lot, but it drops off quick. So with him making a 2-stopper, he wasn't really a threat. And we saw at the end, he was on his last set. He didn't get to take a fresh set of tires, and he was easy pickings. That's just the way it goes, isn't it?
I think you're right there, Matt. Well, before I let you go here tonight and celebrate your podium finish after a phenomenal drive from yourself in the 25 machine, is there anyone watching the broadcast, anyone at home, anyone in the pit crew that you want to shout out and thank for your success here tonight?
Look, first and foremost, with every league, you got to thank your sponsors for the league. Rapid Fired Pizza, OSN Racing, and for the playoffs and the rest of the season, Nitro Setups. They're the ones to thank. And of course, David Santini and Evan Longacre for running the series. They put in a lot of work to make it happen. And of course, for my race, all the boys at Thin Line Racing, and then EPI, Nick Ottinger for doing our setups, and Matt Holden for coming in and sitting on the box for us. It was much appreciated.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us up here in the booth tonight, Matt. Great having you here, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks, man. Have a good one.
You as well. Have a great night.
Peace.
Alrighty, folks. That was Matt Knight taking home 3rd place here tonight. Up next, Chad Gunningsman in 2nd place in the number 9 car. Coming home with 2nd place. Chad Gunningsman, do you have a read, sir?
Yep, I got yes.
Take it away, Jacob.
Well, Chad, certainly you were one of the beneficiaries of that late race caution that came out around lap 130. We saw you looking like you're going to try to execute a one-stop strategy after the stage break. Saw you go maybe just a lap or 2 shorter than Matt Knight. Matt Knight feeling pretty confident that he could have made it on one stop the rest of the way. How were you on fuel? Were you pretty confident, had it gone green the rest of the way, that you would have been able to stay out there on that last stop that you had made prior to the caution?
I was not going to be able to make it. I pretty much decided I was going to run it dry, not so much for field strategy, just because we only had 2 sets of tires for that final stage. So I wanted to have, if we got a late race caution like we ended up having, or I'd have the freshest tires on track with whoever else did that same strategy. So I know Matt and Jeffrey Meyer also did that same thing. So we kind of all benefited big time. But yeah, I think I was probably a 3rd to 5th place car tonight. I think I gave up a lot at the start of the second stage, saving tires so I could go 55 laps or whatever I ended up making it. But yeah, I definitely would have been about 5 laps short on fuel.
Certainly an interesting call there. It definitely worked out. Tell me, once you had that caution come out, and you're able to grab a set of tires. Did you make any kind of setup changes or anything to the car to set yourself up for that last short run there to try to contend with the race leaders? We knew Jamie Knopf and Colby Baber were pretty strong for the most part, so certainly it was going to be a good chance for you to show yourself in the mix of what you could do with those drivers.
Yeah, those two are definitely cars to beat. So I know when we got the caution, I think Jamie had about 8 to 10 laps on, or Jamie had 3 to 5 laps on his tires. Maybe I don't know how many were green flag, but I know Colby had a lot more. So I knew it was going to be, a matter of clearing them probably in the first lap or two. So I could take advantage of the fresh tires before they equalize with theirs. But I kind of went too far in the adjustment to loosen it up. So after I got alongside Jamie after turn 2 on the restart, it kind of broke loose and I gave up all the ground and all the momentum. So it kind of gave Jamie a chance to get Colby on his slightly newer tires before I was able to get back to both of them and make a run at Jamie.
We saw different drivers as well executing maybe the high line versus the low line. We saw some differences between turn 1 and 2 versus turn 3 and 4. For you, was there a spot that you continually like to go to that maybe your car was more comfortable, or was it all about seeking out that fresh air over the nose of the car to try to help it turn through the corners as best as possible, whichever lane that provided you it with?
Yes, my car was built to run the bottom, so kind of didn't help me a whole lot at the end of the race when I was following Jamie and he's running the bottom as well. I really couldn't go to the top at all just because of how loose it would get, especially after I made those pit stop adjustments for the final 20. But definitely set up to run the bottom to get cleaner, as you said. It definitely helps save the tires for a long run. I know a lot of people running the top here at Kansas, but if everybody runs the top, everybody's built to run the top, it really makes it tough to pass somebody who can take your line away.
Well, congratulations on a great job both with the strategy as well as the last run to the checkered flag. Anybody you want to send a shout out to or a big thank you to before we let you go celebrate that second place finish tonight?
Yeah, I want to thank everybody up Frontline Esports who help us run fast in these races. I want to thank Abruzzi and Razor Apparel who provide us with some great teamwear and gloves. I want to thank Wheat and GM for sponsoring us, and then I want to thank the league sponsors Rapid Fire Pizza, Old School Ninjas, and then Nitro Racing and Jeffrey Meyer for all the B cars that he builds for people to grab and run every week.
Congratulations on a great second place finish and looking forward to seeing more results out of you as we work our way through the season this year.
Yep, thank you guys. Appreciate you guys broadcasting too. Want to thank you guys.
Absolutely. That was our second place finisher driver of the number 9 Chevy Camaro, Chad Gooniesman, bringing it home second tonight.
Up next, last, and certainly not going to be least here, Jamie Knopf, the number 28 car, coming home with the win here tonight. Welcome to the booth, Jamie. What an incredible win here tonight, Jamie. The first question that I really got to ask you here is, we saw before Colby Baber made that slight bit of contact to the wall and really brought down his pace. I mean, he was pulling off 1.5 seconds, 2 second plus gaps between himself and the rest of the field. Yourself in that second place spot, kind of seeing that 10 machine just barely ahead of you in the horizon. I mean, before that late stage caution came out, I mean, did you have any thought in your mind that you would be able to pass that 10 car and take the lead here tonight?
I didn't think so. He bounced off the wall a couple of times, looks like, off of 4. And then after that green flag pit stop, I got to within 1.5 seconds of him. And then it's almost like he mirrored my time. He was like watching my time and would mash it a little faster if he needed to go faster. And I was trying to maintain my tires, but trying to catch him at the same time without burning them up. And we had a gap over the people behind. And then I started gaining on him before we pitted the first time after the stage. And I thought he may have been saving. So I started saving in case he was going to try to do it on one stop. Then he pitted. So I was like, well, that's who I'm racing basically, because if everybody else had been saving, 20 laps before that, they could make it and I still may not. So I went ahead and pitted, but yeah, he was fast, ripping the top, and I knew they were speed up there, but I was scared to get up there and run because I've ran a couple of races this week and I've hit the wall and ruined the rest of my race. So I said I'm going to run the bottom until last draw, and then when they had that caution, I had a few laps on my tires, and Chad had fresh tires, and he got loose on the restart, and that let me get away. and then he run me down. I thought I was going to be able to hold him off, and then he run me down, and it was like 10 to go. Man, mine was all over the place. I couldn't hold it, and I done burnt my right front off of it. So I was like, it shouldn't be too loose if I get up top, because I done burnt the right front off on the bottom. And then he went to go under me going into one, so I took it easy going into one and ran the top and gained a little bit. So I ran the top for 2 or 3 laps right there at the end, and I was surprised I was able to put any distance on him with those fresher tires. But yeah, the 10, I thought, he had the best. Kobe, he had the best car, I thought.
Well, and with the pace that the 10 was setting here tonight, it seemed like it was almost unbeatable. But after, like you said, after that little bit of contact that he made with the wall there, he started to fall off, and you were able to push yourself up into that lead spot. Now, coming away with a win here tonight and heading on into the future here, looking into our next race at Bristol Motor Speedway next week, before the beginning of the playoffs here, it looks like. What are you kind of expecting here going into Bristol? A lot different of a racetrack that we're heading to, and a lot different racing style. What are kind of your plans and expectations for Bristol?
Bristol it'll be pretty exciting, like it is on TV for sure, because everything happens so fast. If somebody wrecks or bounce off the wall, you don't have no time to check up. You're probably gonna run over them if they bounce off the wall and back in the groove or something. But I won't be able to run next week. I'm going out of town, so I'll miss that one. But I'll be sure to tune in and watch.
Well, we'll be sad to not see you there, but I'm sure you'll be rooting on your teammates as well as your fellow drivers in the league. But Jamie, before we let you go and crack one open and celebrate tonight's win, is there anyone watching the broadcast, anyone at home or in the pit crew that you want to shout out and thank before you go tonight?
I'd just like to thank everybody at EPI Setup Shop and John Jenkins for all the advice for how to run the bottom and save the right front. That helped me a lot. I just kept reminding myself to let off enough, let it turn, then get back in it after it gets straight. So, and then, like I said, I assumed my right rear would hold it if I went up top, and I know it would burn it off if I went up top and ran the whole run.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations tonight once again, Jamie, on bringing home the win here tonight at Kansas. I look forward to seeing you in a few weeks when we enter into the round of 12, starting the playoffs here at Texas Motor Speedway, hopefully. But Jamie, congratulations once more, and I look forward to seeing you in future races.
All right, thank you, and I'd like to thank Old School Racing, Rapid Fire Pizza, and Nitro Racing for sponsoring the series and everything they do.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us here, Jamie, and we will see you here in a few weeks.
Thank you.
Alrighty, folks. That is going to wrap up our coverage here of the 2022 MSRA Rapid Fire Pizza Nationals here at Kansas Speedway. My name is Mason Heimball with Jacob Fest-Cannon alongside me, bringing you the action here tonight. 1080p 60 frames a second. Thank you all for tuning in and watching. If you enjoyed what you saw, please hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Catch all the action that we have here on Team Goon Squad 7 days a week. Thank you all for watching here once again, and I will see you